type of technology am I capable of coding with? What have I learned? What am I good enough to actually feel that I can help a customer with? Same if, yeah, maybe you have used one of the CMS systems like WordPress or Joomla, and you also need to kind of look at what is your availability? What can you actually help the customer with? There's a lot of things to consider there as well. Maybe you work or open to work in evenings, so you can support the American market, or you want to work normal working hours. So in that case, you could be in the European market and find your customers. Maybe you have good English, and then you can have easily find customers in the UK or in the US, or easily find, but you can communicate with them enough so it works. Or maybe your English is not good, and then maybe you can't, and then instead you need to look at other markets. So looking at all these customers that's out there, there's a lot of customers. You can open up and see in the whole world and see, well, there's plenty of countries out there, and many places that want to have websites, as well as you can look at your local market. Maybe there's places in Cherkasy that are looking for websites. There's also a lot of different types of companies and different sizes of companies. So there's some companies who are very large, and they're looking for development help. Often then kind of full-time basis or being part of their integrated team. And they can be smaller companies with less employees that can maybe just need help with a project. Maybe they want to build a new website, as in this type of case. It can also be very small companies that also can need help with websites. And there can also be a lot of different type of companies. Finance, or musicians, or plumbers, or restaurants, or anything really. I mean, today, everyone more or less needs to be present on the internet to be able to have their customers reach them. And so I think this is kind of where the troublesome part kind of starts. It's so much, right? It's like, what can you do? What are you really good at? As well as, who should I sell to? It's like, who should be your first customer? And the other thing is, and I think that's a lot of, or at least how I felt when I started back in almost 10 years ago now. I was thinking a lot about, so I knew WordPress decently well. It was just me, and to start it out. So I was kind of, what I did was I went to one of our local marketing firms in the US where I moved to, and I said, hey, I can do some WordPress work. Do you have any? And I got a couple tasks here and there. And then I kind of started thinking, oh, this local marketing agency, they need help. So then I started to look at, okay, what other people and firms and such is it that are offering this type of help? So, and there's a lot, right? There is, so if you are a firm, say a firm in the US, that's where my market mainly is, mostly talk to Americans. So they can choose if they're a plumber, for example, or an electrician. Let's do an electrician. So an electrician company, they need to have a website so people in their local area can find them and buy their electrician services. To do so, they have a number of different paths. They can employ a local developer. They can hire a local IT consultant. I'll kind of go through these more in depth, maybe, to kind of a local developer in the US or in the UK for that matter, or in Europe. They work typically, there's a lot of kind of similarities to Ukraine. There's also some differences. In the US, a decently skilled kind of front-end developer costs for a company to hire somewhere between $3,000 and $8,000 per month. But they can hire them locally sometimes if they can find them. They can hire a local IT consultant, meaning they can go to a company that is local to them, and say, hey, we need to have a website built. So a marketing agency or similar. They can code it themselves. And the local IT consultant, maybe I should say, typically a website in the US, if you go and do that route, they charge, well, everything from maybe starting at $5,000 for a website up to $15,000 for a website. They can do it yourself if you're a little bit skilled, or if you use one of these easier CMS systems like Squarespace, or WordPress too, for that matter. I'm kind of a bit partial to WordPress because that is what we're working with, and they are definitely like a very big part of the market. You can source to outsourcing bureaus, so corporations in Ukraine or in India or in Indonesia or Vietnam that are kind of helping you with doing that. There's a ton of them, and that's the business I'm in. We're an outsourcing bureau. You can hire a local freelancer, so freelancer, but in the US, or you can hire an overseas freelancer. So, for example, someone from Cherkasy to do your website. These are all kind of the different options that the electrician company have that wants to make their website. And what I kind of want to go through, I think it's important when knowing when you're trying to sell something, who are you competing against? Who am I up against? And always trying to ask yourself, why should this customer choose to work with me? And why not someone else? Any questions this far?
Чи всі розуміють англійською? Бо зараз можна якраз задати питання. Якщо важко поставити питання англійською, я можу вам допомогти з перекладом. Якщо окей, будемо продовжувати. Yeah, let's continue, I think.
And yeah, so this is a tool that I think everyone can use when you're thinking about how, like, what am I offering? How am I available, or like, how do I stand in terms to my competition? So if the customer wants to do, I would like to have someone help building my website. This little tool here, we have on one axis, the x-axis, we have monies. It could cost little, or it could cost a lot. And on the y-axis, we have experienced service level, meaning how well the customer experiences the total product. Not only the coding, but things such as communication, the coding, reliability, availability, and speed. So reliability meaning being when they ask and say, hey, I want to have my website, and you tell them, great, I'm going to give you your website in 6 weeks. That you get it on time. That is reliability, and that you're always there to help to support if there's any issues going forward. Availability could be, are you on the same time zone? Are you not on the same time zone? Do you pick up your phone? Can we speak with you on the phone? Or is it Slack only, or is it Skype only, or that type of thing? So if they employ a local developer, it's probably relatively expensive, I would think. Typically, as I said, cost anything from maybe starting at $3,000 a month up to $8,000 a month for front end type of knowledge. When you hire one person, you get some of these things. It might be easy to communicate because you talk directly to the person, and the person is sitting in your office doing work. The coding quality might be okay, but it's, once again, one person, and it's not a team. So who knows? Could be good, could not be good, depending on exactly who you hire. Reliability, availability, and speed. Well, reliability and availability is probably very good because it is in-house. They're sitting in your office to code it. So employing a local developer is probably pretty good, I would guess, and decently expensive. If you hire a local IT consultant, meaning you take in a company that has at least a couple of people, if not many, with IT knowledge, you get a lot of these things as well. They're local, so you have the communication, you have the coding quality is probably good because there's a lot of people in that team knowing what they're doing. They're probably reliable and they're probably available because they're local. And speed, well, that's hard to say. Could be good, could not be good, but they probably tend to be pretty expensive because they typically charge in the US, local IT consultants could be anything from $50 an hour to $100 an hour. So it can be really pricey. You can do it yourself. If you're an electrician, you're probably pretty poor at coding, is my guess. So you're probably not going to get that good of a website. It will probably be cheap because you might not even be paying yourself. So it's probably down here in this type of quadrant, which you're comparing to. And an outsourcing bureau then, how does that work? Well, you are pretty similar here to the local IT consultant, right? It's like you have that team of people that you're working with. So coding quality is probably pretty good. Reliability, availability, probably pretty good. Maybe a little bit less because it is overseas, etc. Speed, and it's probably a bit cheaper than employing locally, but it's probably not much cheaper. Knowing my own prices, where we price somewhere around where the local market is. Typically, we try to be a little bit cheaper than what the local developer is, but we try to be a lot cheaper than what the local IT firm is. So probably somewhere up here in that type of range. You can hire a local freelancer, and they're going to be probably cheaper than hiring a full-time developer in-house. So they're going to be cheaper on this axis. They might be. Are they more reliable or available than hiring a developer in-house? Probably not. They're probably going to be less available and less reliable. The coding quality is probably similar to hiring sometime in-house. So they're probably a bit cheaper, but they're probably not as good, I would say, with the reliability and availability versus a local developer. So where does the overseas freelancer go then? If you're working as freelance and you want to compete with these guys. Anyone
How
dare
many
to
are
make a suggestion?
freelancers here, guys? You could use the reactions here, let's say like this.
I'm a freelancer in a different sphere though, but I'd say in this case it would be on x-axis closer to 0. I mean closer to minus, yeah, somewhere over here. And well, as with all freelancers, it depends on the freelancer actually. As for the y-axis, but in general, so like median, to draw median, I would put it below the x. Yeah, well, somewhere, something like that. A little bit better than do it yourself, but worse than all other options.
Perfect. That's where I would put it too. And this is so what I wanted. What I like working in theoretical models to start thinking about. Okay, I'm there. I'm that freelancer. Like when I talk to a customer, and if they're talking to several other parties, I might not be a good option. So how to make your first sale, or how to get selling, or how to turn this around. So instead of being the worst option, when you turn, well, it might be not be the worst, I should say. You're a cheap option. You're not as cheap as myself, so to speak, to doing it yourself. But the quality isn't, or the experience service level isn't high. And there will, of course, be some customers that are willing to pay a little bit less and get less quality. But kind of where you want to be, right, is further up to the up here. If you're up here, then you're both, or actually, well, you don't really want to be here either as a freelancer, right? You want to be here somewhere. That's where you want to be. You almost want to get as much money as the outsourcing bureaus or the local developer, and you want to be able to be experienced as you're giving as a high service level as these firms are. Actually, this one should probably be a little more lower. So getting from here to up here, so you can charge more and you get more yeses. All right. So how I think about this is always how to cross the chasm. How do I get people that I don't know to buy from me that typically needs to have security to buy? So there is this model called crossing the chasm, where you think of people as different type of people. You have the type of person who is an innovator. You know, the type of person when like a new phone comes out, they always buy the absolutely newest model. Or there's a new restaurant in town and they always go try it the first day. It is a personality type. And there is a certain percentage of the population that is very risk willing and really want to go try it when there's something new. They're called innovators in this model. You also have early adopters. So that is people who's maybe not as risk willing, but they don't really need to have any reference to purchase from you, or to go to a restaurant. They hear, oh, it opened a new restaurant in town. So maybe they don't rush to the first day, but they definitely make sure to go there after a week or two. And that's also a personality type, is very risk willing and risk taking. Then you have early majority. So that's typically the type of people that wouldn't go to the restaurant the first week or the second week or the third week. They kind of first need to know that, oh, it seems to still be around after 6 months, so they must be doing pretty good food. And then you have what's called late majority, which is the type of person who's a lot more conservative. That it's not enough that the restaurant has been there for 6 months. They also maybe need to have a friend who has been there and said, oh, the food is really good there. You should really go try it. And then it's the laggards, the people who never try anything new, and they're just going to continue going to the same restaurant as they always has gone to. They might eventually purchase a meal from the new restaurant, but maybe that's only first when their old restaurant has closed down. Then they can go to that new restaurant. So these personality types are in all industries. They're in all. They are electricians that is in this type of or that think like this. There are freelancers that think like this. There are, so all over you find them, more or less. If you try to adopt this type of thinking to web work, so selling a website, you have the first people, maybe the innovators, is kind of the people that don't really care that much. They're like, oh, cool. You have started to do some coding. I'll purchase a website from you. But it's really so, and it's only a very small part of the population. So you can probably sell that website to someone local, someone you know, someone that you don't really need to prove for, or you can do it very cheap, etc. But the question is really like, how do you get to the bigger market? How are you able to establish and be able to sell and compete with the other freelancers or the other sourcing bureaus? Crossing the chasm is what the model is called. Has anyone ever seen this before? I see one yes, at least. Maybe everyone has seen this. I don't know. It came in. I saw it in business school like 15 years ago. Relatively common concept. So how I want to kind of do this, and how you're able to get to the next level, like how you're able to attract customers that need something more than like knowing you, is typically what we call beachhead. So how you get to those is that you think of all the customers out there. So instead of kind of thinking about, I would like to have someone building my website, I would like to work as a developer building websites, you narrow it down a lot so you can be competitive in a smaller niche. So you try to find something that you're really good at, or that you can convince someone that you're really good at, even if you're not. I made an example here, which could be relatively. So say you have some front end coding skills, for example, or knows one of these CMSs decently, so you can build a website. But you can't really compete because you're not the best coder out there, and you're not the local developer. But you can't sit in their office. You gotta communicate via the web in one way or another. You can start thinking about, okay, what is it that I'm really good at, or what do I know really well? Where can I start? Where I understand the industry. So, for example, I love sushi. I know sushi really well. I know a sushi menu looks like. I know how a good sushi website looks like. I know when I'm looking for my sushi and I Google around and I find different websites, I know which one attracts me. And maybe I know someone who works at a local sushi place that can tell me how the restaurant works, what they're looking for when they're looking for someone to do their website. So trying to really narrow down, and not necessarily just narrow down thinking, oh, I'm good at PHP, I'm going to do a PHP, or looking for PHP jobs, but really kind of by industry, by something else that you feel you have an edge in. So what you can do more on those kind of lines, for example, if you only look at, well, I'm only going to look at English speaking countries. I know English. I'm only going to look at customers that has, it's not large. I'm not very good. I don't know much about large companies. I mainly know things about relatively small companies. That's where my friends work. They work at small companies, and I worked at a small company. So I kind of know how that works. I know there's an owner, and you typically need to get to that owner for them to say yes. And I'm going to go into a restaurant and going to go into sushi. I know a little bit of WordPress, so I'm going to build a website on WordPress. And I know how Las Vegas is because I've been there once. So I know how that city is. If I narrow myself down to, instead of saying, well, I'm going to build websites, right? I'm instead going to do only sushi websites, only in Las Vegas. And if you look in Las Vegas, there's a lot of sushi restaurants in Las Vegas. I just took a little screenshot, but I found probably 200 or something like that. There's a lot. And you only need to sell a couple to start with. What you can do more is, on top of that, well, I know this technology, I know this industry very well. You can also try to create yourself an edge, and that as well, trying to find your personality type. What are you really good at? Are you very good at communication? Are you really good at reliability, so being very detail oriented? Or are you very, very good at coding? Or maybe you're very fast. So kind of trying to see, well, where am I in this? So I can tell the customer, or I can find a customer that's actually looking for something that is in line with who I am and what I'm doing. So me personally, I'm not particularly good at coding, and I'm not particularly detail oriented, but I'm pretty fast. Make fast decisions, and I make things happen relatively fast. So I'm kind of the strength, or my strength is my personality is I'm very speedy. So if I put all these things together, so my offering is not websites. I offer to make websites for sushi restaurants in Las Vegas. And I'm very fast, so I'm going to be able to get your website in 2 weeks. And I have done sushi restaurants before. And how you do that? So you pick your industry. You can start very locally, right? You can go back here and see, well, do I have any of these risky family and friends maybe that know someone that has a sushi restaurant? And you can do their website. You can maybe do it for free just to get like a portfolio item in there. So you have something to show. So when you go to the restaurant, so when you reach out, if it's in this case is in Vegas, you can send them, hey, this is me, and I made this and this sushi restaurant website, and I love sushi, and I know exactly how to display sushi to make people want to eat it and want to buy it. You're still selling your website, you're still doing your coding, right? But for the customer, it's a whole different perception what they're getting. So their demand is instead, I would like to have my sushi restaurant website done fast, and maybe in a hurry. And what you're supplying is instead, I would like to work building sushi websites fast because that's what I'm good at. I'm good at sushi and I'm fast. And then if we look at this exercise again, right? Looking, okay, they're going to employ a local developer. Instead, it's not building a website this time. It's building a sushi restaurant website that should be done fast. Well, the local developer might not know much about sushi. They're still going to cost the same, right? But the experience is going to be, how well is this sushi website going to turn out? Well, they're probably a little bit worse off this time because they're just a general developer. They maybe never ate sushi or looked at sushi or have anything to do with it. So they don't know how to display it, maybe. The local IT consultant, well, they should have a little bit more experience building restaurant websites, right? They're still going to be pricey. Price is still going to be the same. Maybe not fully at 100 on top, but almost. Doing it yourself, still probably down here. Still pretty cheap. You don't have to pay it, but you're still going to be pretty crappy at it. Maybe a tiny bit better because you know your industry, but you're probably still not very good at coding. The outsourcing bureaus, also still kind of up here somewhere. Pretty pricey, but knowledge level, maybe somewhere here. You guys all see where this is going, of course. But the higher the local freelancer. Well, what does a local freelancer know about sushi? Probably nothing, right? It's probably going to be, I don't know where I put them, here somewhere. And yourself. Well, then you can present yourself, right? It's like you have experience building sushi websites, right? You're fast, so you can fulfill that criteria that they want to have their website up fast. So first of all, you're probably pretty good at this. If you built one or two before, and then you sell one more, and you built 3, and you sell one more, you built 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and then we're building your 9th sushi restaurant website, you're going to be pretty damn fast at it. And when you've done that, then you can start inching up and demanding more for your services because you're going to be better. You might not still be able to compete for some of these things in such as availability, communication still. It will be better to communicate with someone who is in your office, etc. If you are the sushi restaurant, but you definitely will be able to compete much better with a much smaller niche, and it can be very niched. And when you do this, you should be able to cross the chasm and go to a bigger, you have a better offering because your offering is very specific to the very specific customer. And if you continue doing this in Las Vegas or in Cherkasy for that matter, you just start offering, getting one sushi restaurant to agree to do, or that you do the website for them, maybe do it for free. Then you can start referring back, right? Go to the next one. Hey, I built these guys' website. Turned out really well, didn't it? And then you can get references. And if you do this, and you can do this abroad too, right? You can really get to know Las Vegas, or you can narrow it down even more. You can really get to know a small part of Vegas. Vegas is a big city. I don't know how many million lives there, but probably 5 or something. You can take a smaller part of it, and you can get to know all the street names. You can get to know all the sushi restaurants that is in the area, etc. And then all of a sudden, you will, when you've done 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you will also be able to kind of reach the late majority in this very specific niche of sushi owners that wants websites in Vegas. And that is how you can kind of capture a bigger part of the market. And when you're good at that, then you have like a big portfolio of sushi websites. Well, then you can go to the next town. You can go to Cincinnati or Chicago or Miami, or wherever you want, and kind of start taking some of these factors away. You maybe don't need to narrow yourself down to Vegas anymore, or maybe you don't need to narrow you down to sushi anymore, right? Like I've done 50 restaurant websites. Then you can start opening up, and then your market becomes bigger and bigger, and then you can continue building from there. All right, so that's kind of how I see, and this is how I went with my company. 2013, I started with, I know some people in Ukraine, and I hired a developer. And I was like, what do we do with this? So then we started seeing like, how do we become competitive? So we choose WordPress. I was living at the time in the state of Massachusetts in the northeastern US. So we said, okay, we're going to approach our neighboring cities here. We're going to be really good in our small little geographical area, so they get to know about us. And we're going to even be really good at only one thing, which is we did only PSD to WordPress using Foundation CSS framework and building with advanced custom fields in the backend. That was it. So we became really, really good at that, and got 1 customer, got 2 customers, got a bit of a reputation. We had referrals coming in. And then from that, we've built and built and built. Today, we have, well, customers in pretty much all the states, I would say. Well, 50 states, more or less. Maybe we have 45 states or so. So worked really well for us, and I really like the kind of idea and thinking of it. I think I got another few minutes or so. Dennis, should we go over to questions or?
Yeah, I think that we could refer to some questions that you got through our registration form, and there were some good questions.
Cool. All right, so I'll just run through some sales tips fast, for kind of hands-on sales tips. And I run my sales team. I'm the sales manager in our team. And I think one thing that is important to think about is when you're communicating with your customer, just always smile. If you're smiling when you're typing it, even if you're just not talking to them, you're just typing to them, put a smile on your face when you're doing it. It is your customer. They're paying your money, and they should be treated with a happy face. If you do that, things are going to be easier. If you type emails or have communication in a negative way, it's not going to fly well over time. Another thing is to make sure it's easy to say yes. That means when I send a quote or an offer, I don't ask a lot of things in the offering. The customer should really be able to look at it and say yes or no. If they have to say, oh, well, so how I see like kind of a way not to get the offer or not to get the customer is kind of like, oh, we're going to make this website. Oh, do you want to have 5 or 6 pages? Do you want to have the footer to be green or red? Do you want to have this and this and that? So if you list up like 5 different questions that they have to answer, what happens then is when they receive the quote, they start thinking about those questions. And it's like, I can't say yes or no before I've like thought about these questions, etc. Making a sell is always about speed. And like if they can just get it and they can read it, it's like, oh, sounds good. Yes. So leaving a couple of those questions out and just making sure that whatever comes across to the customer is easy for the customers to say yes or no to. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to spend 6 more hours thinking about how this and this and that should be. Very important. Along with that is giving fixed prices if you're working on a product basis. Most customers, at least in the US, rather pay twice the price, but know what it costs because they need to price it out to their customer. So if you want to get it an easy yes, it's like, oh, it's cost $2,000. Okay, cool. versus, oh, it costs somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000. Then that's very hard for them. So if they say, oh, it's going to cost 2,000, okay, cool. Like that's much more likely to get a yes with a fixed price, even if it's way higher. And then another very like typical thing is talking about fairness with the customer. It's like if you ever come in a conversation about you don't know what it's going to cost or like what it should cost or how you can always tell the customer or ask the customer, hey, well, I don't really know what it's going to cost, but what do you think is a fair price? We as humans are very like tied to fairness, always from our kids. Using the word fair, it can be in other conversations too. Maybe you've done a project and you get a lot of comments or feedback back, and there's like, or you get things that are outside of the scope. Like I didn't include this in the price that I was offering you. You can tell them, well, this and that wasn't really in the scope. Or do you think it's fair that I should do this without any extra cost? Instead of telling them, oh, this is outside of scope, you should pay me $300. You say, well, do you think it's fair that I should do this extra work without getting paid for it? So that is another. And then 2 book recommendations there, Crossing the Chasm and How to Get to Yes. I love those books. They were great. All right.
I just wanted to clarify, like the last point, asking about what's fair. Do you think it's strictly the Western culture, or is it an acceptable question worldwide? Asking the client, oh, is it fair?
My customer, I know, so the US very well, and I know Northern Europe, so Germany, the UK, Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark. It's definitely okay in all those. I don't know Asia very well. So I don't know Asian, and I don't know. Well, we kind of use it. I think in Eastern Europe, it's fine, as far as I know, at least. But so I think definitely Europe and the US, definitely.
All right.
Which also brings out Australia, etc. But mainly Asia, I'm not sure about. Any other questions? Got a couple prepared questions here. So. All right, I'll try to run through those 3. So how to compete with professional freelancers. I think that's kind of a little bit or how I would think about it is to try to specialize. A freelancer, kind of as I described, find your niche, try to be really good at something, even if that something is very small. And when you do that, you can start building your portfolio in that very specific niche. And by that, you will be able to compete with the freelancers. It's very important to kind of sit down and think about what am I good at and what am I not good at. So like, what you're offering to the customer. If you know you're terrible at communication, then like, don't try to market yourself like that. Or like, then you can even say it. Like, say, you know what, I'm really good at coding. I'm not very good at communication. And as long as you let that customer know that, then you can compete. And then the coding part can be your niche, so to speak. So niche, small market area. Practical tips on how to overcome fear and get started.
I think you spoke a lot about crossing the chasm. I think it relates a lot.
Yeah, and it's just to do it. I don't know if like practical tips how to overcome the fear. Different people, different personalities have different ways to do that. I think taking small steps could be something, so to speak. Start if this is coding a website, don't try to get an American customer right away. Try to get someone local so you can overcome the first fear of like doing the coding or whatever your fear is. If the customer communication is the fear, like do it locally first with little risk. Take a small step at a time and then build upon it. I think. Then of course it's the fear of like going away from a job, maybe a secure income, to being freelance. That is hard. I would say. My kind of, I guess my tips there is do it early if you can. There's different stages in life. When you're young and you don't have kids and such, it might be easier. You're not risking as much. So if anything, maybe like try to do it as early as you can. And otherwise try to save up a bit so you have some cash in the account before you take the leap, because you might fail and you don't want to put yourself in a terrible situation if you do fail. So small steps. Tips on promoting a product service. For freelancers, make sure and your English is good. It's a lot. I think that's one of the things that we compete on. I have native English. I'm not a native speaker myself. My English is sound very American, and I can come across as an American. But like if you're written communication in emails and such, really, really work on making sure that the English is good. The grammar is right, and those things. If you feel you're not competent or confident yourselves, find someone else that can help you with correcting the English, getting it well. It's huge if you get it, and it's just a negative thing. Is like if there's a lot of people out there that just doesn't like when it's not correct. Doesn't mean you have to write an essay. It's just like the sentences you're writing, make sure they're correct.
What about the company?
On promoting a company
Mm-hmm.
in general.
Let's say it's a few developers that came together to launch their little firm.
Then I think specialize. So I mean, there's all the traditional stuff, right? I mean, how you do marketing, and that's a different topic, I think. But I think like ask the expert is very good. So like if you're a couple of people coming together and you're launching a firm, and you're whatever 5 content creators, or you're 5 developers or 5 designers, realize your limitation. Like if you're very good at coding, you're probably not very good at promoting. So try to find someone else who is really good at promoting to help you out. And it doesn't mean they have to work for you, or like full time or anything, but they can just like maybe spend 10 hours with you, pay them for 10 hours of their time to help to come up with those things. Like then there's other general things, right? But there's a lot of marketing. It's like people just have attention for a few seconds. Your message have to be short, brief, spot on, niched, and all those sort of things. But that's a kind of a jungle. But I think overall, make sure that like, ask someone who actually knows to work with you. And it's a big thing to promote. But at the end of the day, clear message, short, easy. If you can't describe your service in one sentence, it's not good enough. Like you should be able to tell the customer what value you're adding for them. So what you're doing for them that's good in like one sentence. Like white label agency. We have many of those kind of small pitches, but we are really great at communication. That's what we do. How can you tell if a customer is trustworthy? What should be done in the first place? Looking for a client or forming a team? Well, depends how much or like, that's a lot of it depends. So how can you tell if a customer is trustworthy? You can't, but I would really recommend to chat with them. All customers are just people. So I would actually recommend have a video call with them. Even if you're uncertain about your English, etc., it's better just like chat with them. When you see someone in the eyes, no matter where from the world you are, you can typically tell them if they're what type of personality they have, if they are trustworthy or not. I guess that's communication, talking to them, really trying to just not sending, oh, here's my offer. Okay, yes, okay, I'll go code. No, it's like have a conversation, try to sit down, try to do it online as you would do it locally, right? As you would evaluate if one of your buddies are going to be trustworthy or someone you meet on the street is going to be trustworthy. Sit down, have a coffee, try to chat with them. Do the same thing with your customer. I think looking for client or forming a team. Me personally, I always look for the client. But that is also a little bit different depending on what you're going to build. But I'm always selling. We're launching maintenance now as a service. I've sold probably, I don't know what it is, like, or me and my sales team, we sold like 500 sites or something that we're going to take on as maintenance. We've done that over the last 3 months. And on Monday, my first maintenance guy started. So we had none who was going to do the work before we sold. So me personally, I always sell first and then figure it out, because it's not that bad. If you happen to say you sell a website and you can't do it, what does it matter? right? Or like it doesn't matter that much. You can't tell, oh, you know what, I can't do it. Something got in between. But then you're testing to see, is there actually a need for my sushi websites in Las Vegas? Can I sell one before I get a developer, or before? So it's like me personally, always sell first. Sell. And sales is so much of being a freelancer, or running a company. You got to be, needs to come first. You need to have someone who can do it. What does one need to launch a company? Depends. Not much. It doesn't cost much to launch a company if you don't buy anything, so to speak. If it's just yourself you're selling and your services, which is great in this IT industry. Then there's a lot of other, I don't know, you need to have a little bit of each. I don't think you can just kind of start, but you do need to kind of be a curious person, because you're going to have to figure out the legal stuff, like what paperwork is going to need to be filled in. How does my taxes work? How does, what is market? Like, how do I find customers? How do I do the coding? How do I treat my employees? There's a lot of those things, but I think like curiosity and kind of willingness to work and challenge yourself, I think are maybe the most important things. But I don't think you like need anything. I didn't have any money when I started. And I didn't really I had business experience. So like I knew how to sell, I guess, is my main part and such, but not much, I think. And in Ukraine is pretty, starting an SPD, if you want to start small, is relatively simple. Just go to a local account